Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Candace, or you might know me as Sew Bake Make, and I make sewing patterns and sewing videos, and I am so excited for today's video because we are finally diving into the summer makes. So the last video I posted was actually my plans for all my summer makes, and I talked about I think 12 or so projects in that video. I was hoping to get them all cut out and just sew a bunch of them in a couple days, and that is still my plan, but I wasn't able to cut out everything. I have 4 projects cut out, and I also have a couple fabrics pre-washing, and I pulled 3 more. But I am so excited to be sewing something other than my own sewing patterns. I recently released the sourdough set. There's a top and pants and shorts pattern, and although I do really love those patterns, I need to sew something else because that's all I've been sewing. I've just been sewing samples for that pattern. I did also get a start on my list because some of the projects that I talked about in that video were my sourdough set. I basically only have a couple more days where my kids are in camp and stuff where I can sew. So I'm hoping to do as much of this as I can. So I will show you the projects that I do have cut out right now. These are the 4 that I cut out this week. So this is the Soliel dress. It's Paradise Pattern's newest pattern. It's going to come out soon. And I cut it in this gorgeous hand embroidered linen tablecloth that I've been holding on to for a couple years. Then I cut out a ginger tie top by Small Museum. And this is a fabric I got at a fabric swap. I believe this is Abby's old fabric. It's a linen viscose mix, I believe. Then I cut out the Daphne top by BF Patterns, that's Blackbird's pattern company. And I'm using this eyelet that I bought at Our Social Fabric like years ago. And then the last thing I cut out was a pair of sourdough shorts. And this is a red gingham from Blackbird. It's a washed linen. And I'm gonna do a quick little like boxer hack on these. I wanna get through as much as I can of this today. So I think I'm just gonna start sewing and I'll do little check-ins. I'm gonna start with the Soliel dress because I am testing for this pattern and there's a deadline for that. So we will start with this one. So just before we get into the sewing, I wanted to show you how absolutely gorgeous this tablecloth is. I'm pretty sure it's 100% linen, and I found it at Value Village about 2 years ago, I think, for $12. And it is so gorgeous. It is completely hand stitched, and it has this beautiful China embroidery pattern on it. I've been told that it's called the Blue Willow pattern, which I wasn't familiar with, but I think it is just stunning. The tablecloth did have a little bit of damage, so I cut around it, but I took forever trying to figure out what the best placement for it was with the dress pattern, and I'm so glad I took the time to do that because I think it turned out perfectly. LDH just sent me a new pair of scissors, or Fabric Shears, I guess. And these are their Midnight Edition ergonomic scissors. And they were just gifted to me. I had no obligations to post or anything. But these are the best scissors I have ever used. And I am not normally like wowed by scissors. I think that Fabric Shears, if you pay, you know, 30 bucks, you're getting a pretty good product and it'll be able to cut fabric. But these are incredible. They're so sharp and so light. And I don't know if you can like hear like that sound. Like it cuts so well. I don't even know really how to describe it other than it's like just cutting through it like it's nothing. And I'm just shocked by how good these are. They're not paying me to say this again, but these are incredible. Also, I'm using this loop turner. No, it's not a loop turner. I'm using a tube turner, and usually you're supposed to sew the end closed, but I'm just shoving it in there. But you stick the little straw in first, and then you turn it Usually you're supposed to put it all the way through the tube, but I'm finding this works well because it's just staying in place. But there's like a stick. This one's a metal one, the other ones are wooden. But you just push one end into the straw or like the tube and then feed it back over itself. And it is very quick. I actually think this is called a quick turn now that I am doing this and saying this. Much better than using a safety pin or a loop turner. So I find loop turners always betray me. I always lose the end when I'm like halfway through. But that was super easy. Okay, we're done the straps now. My mic is dying. Hopefully you can hear this, but this is the dress. I just finished it. It only took me an hour and a half, which is crazy. I am a very fast sewist, but I did have to kind of like take my time more because I've never sewn this dress before, so I had to really look at the instructions, but it's super cute. Sana's patterns are always good and they always fit well and they're always beautiful. The only thing I changed with this was I had to take the bralette in a little bit. It has a little built-in bra inside, which is so smart. It was just a little puffy though. So I had to take it in by like an inch or so on each side, but it is so cute. And I actually really impressed myself with how fast I sewed that. So I now have about 2 hours left before I have to pick up my kids. So I'm going to try to sew the ginger tie top because I think that one's going to be really fast. Okay, I actually have less time than I thought because I have to walk my dog, and I also just provided my feedback for the tester for the Soliel dress because I'm a tester. We're going to see. I'm going to try really hard to finish this in 1 hour. So the first step is to sew all of these tie pieces together. So let's do that. I really keep meaning to put a chopstick in my sewing room because that is the best tool for turning straps and tubes and things inside out, or right side out, I should say. But a pen works fine, a marker. I have my 4 ties. I'm going to press them and then we will move on to the bodice. I always think it's kind of funny that sewing, well, actually I don't think it's funny because I don't like ironing, that so much of sewing is pressing. Basically, I would say at least 50% is pressing because every seam that you sew, you have to press it afterwards, usually, or else you just won't end up with a nice finished product. It's hard to like move on to the next step if you haven't pressed. But it's really funny because before I started sewing, I basically never used an iron, and I worked in an office and I had to wear dress shirts a lot. I used to be a lawyer and I would do anything and everything to avoid having to press a shirt. I really hate ironing shirts. I would rather re-wet the shirt and throw it in the dryer to get the wrinkles out than get my ironing board out. The only thing that I ever really ironed was my hair. I don't know if you guys remember that. Maybe you're too young. I don't know how old my audience is here. But when I grew up, hair straighteners weren't a thing until I was, I don't know, like a teenager, a little bit older. But I remember being in grade 9 and taking my mom's iron and literally like putting my hair on the ironing board like this and then taking the iron and ironing it like that. I mean, I think hair straighteners didn't exist. Maybe I'm completely wrong, but that's what all me and my friends were doing. That was like very early 2000s, I think, or like late 90s. If you remember that, then you are probably also close to turning 40 this year, which feels really crazy. 40 always seemed so old to me in my head when I was younger, but now I feel like the time just disappeared into thin air, and I feel like I'm still 25, so I don't know what's up with that. Okay, it is 3 o'clock and I have to take my dog for a walk. She's begging me to take her out. So I'm almost done this top. The only thing I have to do is close up these little gaps that I left to turn it to the right side, but it's looking really cute. Kind of like a little apron. I really love how simple this top is to make, and it's very easy to fit also because it's just got ties at the sides. I have to take my dog for a walk now, and then I have to pick up my kids from camp, but we are 2 pieces down, 2 to go from my cut pile, and I'm gonna try to cut out 3 more tonight. Maybe I'll be able to do 3 more tomorrow. Stay tuned for tomorrow. So I didn't end up getting another day to sew after this. It was just too hectic with packing up for the cottage and everything, but I wanted to show you the finished ginger tie top. It is so cute, and I love this color of red. So yeah, this is how it turned out. We are still going to make one more project for this video, so that's coming next. Hello again. So it is now September 9th and summer is pretty much done. I can feel it slipping away quickly. The mornings and the evenings are getting really cool now, and it's just not getting as warm in the daytime, which makes me really sad because summer is my favorite season and my favorite season to sew for. But I'm a little bit excited for fall, and I have some fun patterns planned for the fall and winter. But here is the update on the summer makes. So I ended up getting through almost all of the projects on my list. I did not film everything because I just ran out of time. The only full day that I ended up having for sewing was the day that you just saw, where I made the ginger top and the Soliel dress, and the rest of the makes I made just like really quickly with no filming. And then we ended up heading up to the cottage for the month of August. So we spent a lot of time on the lake, outside in the sunshine, boating, and doing all that fun Northern Ontario stuff. And I did get a little bit of sewing done up there. I made 2 of my next Nomi patterns, and I also made the Shoreline Shift by Kaden Naughton, but that's pretty much all I did all month. So the only other 2 projects that were on my list that I didn't get to or that I cut out were the Daphne top by BF Patterns and the Bestie bag by BF Patterns. So I have all of my pieces cut out, and I'm going to try to sew the Daphne top today, and we will see about the Bestie bag. But the Daphne top is a really summery one, and I cut it out of this eyelet fabric that I've had for a long time. I'm wondering if I'm missing some pieces because I did take it out while I was at the cottage to maybe try and sew it, and it looks like I'm missing some pieces. So I'll have to see when I get to whichever step I'm missing the piece in, but we're just gonna get going and see if I can get this done. So I made a mistake right away. I knew something seemed wrong when I started sewing, and I feel like when I take a really long break from sewing, I just like lose all my sewing knowledge, and the first project back feels so much harder, and that's kind of how this feels. But we backtracked. I just missed a step in the instructions because I wasn't paying attention, but I have now sewn the 2 straps, and I have to flip them right side out. I think it's something like this. Yeah, that, I don't know, that seems short. There is a yoke, but anyways, we're gonna keep going. I've actually made even more mistakes than I originally thought, and I've basically had to seam rip every seam that I've sewn so far. But I have now located the correct place in the instructions where I'm supposed to be. I started sewing a different view, so we're back on track. This is the yoke with the straps and the button front part. It is looking quite short to me. I know that this top it sits pretty high on the models, so I know the intended fit is pretty high, but I'm unsure. Anyways, this has taken me probably an hour to do, which is really slow for me personally. And my kids are gonna get home soon, but we're just gonna keep going until I have to go make dinner and see how far we can get. I totally forgot about this because I cut this so long ago, but I did fussy cut all the pieces, so I made sure that the print or like the embroidery lined up on the side seams, which I'm very proud of. And now I'm just sewing the fronts and backs together. Here is where we are at. The backs and fronts are sewn together, and I've just finished the armholes with bias binding. I did lose a piece of bias binding, so I just cut an extra piece. Luckily, I had some of the same fabric lying around. So next I'm going to bind this armhole, and then I think I just have to attach it to the yoke because the button plackets are done and so are the hems. And then I think it's just buttonholes and buttons and the little waist ties and channel. But we're doing pretty good. I haven't made any more mistakes yet, so knock on wood. I'm kind of guessing where the armhole ends because I can't really tell from this pattern piece, and I don't know if that's my cutting error or what. I would say probably my fault, but we're just gonna guesstimate where it is. It should be about the same length as the back side, which I can tell, so that looks about right. So we have gotten the back attached to the yoke, and now I have to stitch in the ditch to secure it. The inside yoke is not attached, so it has like a folded edge that's covering the gathering. I've pinned it in place. I'm going to stitch from the right side in this stitch. This is actually probably my least favorite thing in sewing, and the thing that I am the worst at is stitching in the ditch because I just find it really fiddly and I always miss the fold on the inside and I just don't like it. But we're gonna try because if you don't practice something, you don't get better at it. So here we go. I have a feeling it's gonna be horrible, but fingers crossed. Okay, it wasn't as bad as I thought, but I did miss here and the very end. So I'm gonna just re-sew those. I have to say that this is quite a fiddly top to sew because there is this like sharp corner here with the yoke, and I just, as I said, don't like stitching in the ditch. It doesn't look quite as neat as I would like, but we're just gonna keep going. But I've kind of come to realize that every garment, whether you buy it ready to wear or you make it, has some little imperfections, and that's kind of like the beauty of sewing anyways, right? So I have this little area that I have to hand stitch because I just can't get it looking neat. So here is how it's looking. The sun is so pretty right now. The button bands are done, so I'll add the buttons and the buttonholes. Then there will be a waist channel here with a little tie to cinch it in. And I actually think it fits pretty well. It is a high neck, but since it has the button placket, I can wear it like a little bit open. I either like super high or a lower cut, so I'm not loving this like mid-length neckline, but I'll be able to wear it different ways since there's a placket. So I think I'll only get a couple more steps done and I'll have to finish it tomorrow because I do have to feed my children dinner. As much as I would like to sew all night. So I'll see you when I see you. Good morning. It is day 2 of making this top and I am pretty sure I'm gonna finish it today. I pinned on the waist tie casing yesterday, so I just have to sew that on, sew the drawstrings, and then do the buttons. So I'm a little worried that it's kind of like apron-like or to Little House on the Prairie, but I'm gonna reserve judgment until I try it on. Casing is on. Now we are going to sew the drawstrings. These two pieces are slightly different lengths and I'm not entirely sure why. Only one of them is marked as the number 15, but I think I'm just gonna sew them together and hope for the best. Drawstring is finished and last step is buttonholes. I have a whole bunch of vintage buttons. I have this container and another container and 3 other containers from my aunt that I just inherited the other day, but I haven't gone through them yet. These are mostly white ones, so I'm just gonna dump these out and try to find 5 or 6 that match and sew them all on. All right guys, here is the finished top. I'm pretty happy with it. As I said, I was not completely sure how I felt about the neckline because it kind of hits at just an awkward spot for me. I just don't really wear tops like this. I'm not sure, I can't really put my finger on it, but I did try to kind of like open up the top button and see how that would look. And I think it's cute, but this fabric is pretty stiff that I've used for the top. I used, I think, a thrifted bed sheet for the yoke and the waist tie situation. So yeah, I don't know if that's gonna work. I guess I could press it into place, but I actually am not mad about how it looks done up as well. I didn't put this in the video, but the buttonholes were a bitch to sew. They were so difficult and I ended up having to sew them manually. So completely like zigzag stitch, big zigzags on the top and bottom because the fabric was just getting like jammed underneath the buttonhole foot and would not move properly. So that was annoying, but otherwise this came together pretty easily. It is definitely not my best sewing, and that's partly I think because I've taken a big break from sewing, and then also just I'm not that good at stitching in the ditch, and corners like this, I think you can see here this corner at the back was not done very well. So I think that in the future, if I were to make this again, I would hand sew the corners just because it is a really tricky spot to get looking neat. But yeah, overall, very happy with this. And I really like this eyelet fabric and it's kind of like a nice little transitional piece. Also, I had planned to show you all of my summer makes, which are mostly here. I think I'm missing maybe like 3 or 4 pieces, but this video is already long enough. So I'm gonna make that into a separate video, which I will post very soon because those kinds of videos I can make much quicker. But I finished almost all the projects that I had planned out in my summer makes video. And then a bunch of these are also my sourdough pattern samples because I had to make a lot of those for that pattern, but they ended up being such great pieces to have this summer because they're so easy to wear and throw on and super comfortable and also cute, which is always the goal, right? So anyways, thanks so much for hanging out with me while I sewed, and I will link the patterns that I sewed in this video in the description below if you're interested. and I will see you in the next one. Bye.